Okay, thanks. And so, sorry, this is a PIC meeting for February 18th, 2021. First, we'll start by honoring the land and territory. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of the many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Ottawadron, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, water, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us. So I'm just going to start with Steve Oliver is taking the minutes of this evening, and we'll start with the introductions, and members can introduce themselves. Just as I call your name, unmute your mic, and then say your name and the part of the region where you're representing. Okay. So I am Andrea Charan. I am in Oakville. I am the co-chair of the PIC committee. And Zina, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everyone. How are you? This is Zina Al-Mudarris, the co-chair for the PIC committee, and I'm located in Oakville.
Thank you, Zina. Nina, go ahead.
Oh, hi, this is Nina. I'm from White Oak Secondary School. I'm one of the co-chairs there. Yes, it's okay. Hi, everyone.
Thank you, Nina. Sherry?
Hi, I'm Sherry White. I'm the PIC representative for Mackenzie Smith Bennett in Acton.
Thank you, Sherry. Rupi?
Hi, everyone. My name is Rupi. I'm from the Burlington area. It's a PIC parent.
Thank you, Rupi. Ali?
You're welcome.
Hi, folks. My family and I live in Milton, and I represent, I guess, Bruce Trail Public School, the best public school in Bruce Trail. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Ali. Lauren? Oh, sorry, Lauren's not here yet. Josie?
Yes, hi, I'm Jose Landrio, and I represent Georgetown District High School in Georgetown.
Thank you, Jose. Patricia?
Hi, I'm Patricia Kirshner, and I represent Silver Creek Public School in Georgetown.
Thank you, Patricia. Nuri?
Hi, everyone. I live with my family in Rockwood, and both my children go to schools in Halton School Board. Hi.
Thank you, Nuri. Sarah Suhail?
Hi, all. I'm here from Burlington. I represent Ryerson Public School.
Hi, Sarah. And Sarah Sharif?
Hi, everyone. I'm from Burlington North, so I represent Orchard Park Public School.
Thank you, Sarah. And we're also joined today by Trustee Jean Gray.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jean Gray. I am up here in the hills, representing all of the Halton Hills and the 15 schools up here. Delighted that on board tonight is Silver Creek representation, Georgetown representation, and MSB representation. So welcome aboard, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. And Trustee Tanya Rocha?
Good evening, everyone. So I'm one of the 11 trustees, and I represent East Oakville.
Thank you, Tanya. We also have a community representative on our committee, and that's Uzma.
Hi, everyone. My name is Uzma Kazi. I'm a youth settlement specialist with the board, and I'm in Oakville.
Thank you, Uzma. And Steve Oliver is our board staff.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you all again. Steve Oliver. I'm the vice principal at Georgetown High School, and I'm here as a support liaison type resource for everybody.
Thank you, Steve. And John Pennyfowler, our superintendent.
Welcome, and thank you, everybody, for giving up your time tonight. And I'm really excited about the presentation. And hats off to Andrea, because I think you have a career here. You're doing very well.
Thank you.
Very calm.
Okay, so passing of the minutes from January 14th, I didn't see any problems with it. Does anybody else have anything to say about the minutes, or can we make a motion? I see Zena, sorry. Zena made a motion to pass.
Pass.
If you unmute and just say second. Oh, there you go. Sherry seconds. Thank you. Okay, Uzma, it's, sorry, not Uzma. Zena, it's over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you so much. So for today, we have one of the amazing presentation, which I was looking for it. It is the Supporting Your Child's Mental Health and Well-Being in Current Times. This presentation is represented by the Superintendent, Mark Zonneveld. I'm sorry if I spell it wrong. And by Michelle Bates, the Mental Health Lead, and Michelle McKinn, Student Well-Being Structure Leaders. Please go ahead with the presentation, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for inviting us. We're thrilled to be here as well. So we have the opportunity for a new department in our board called Student Wellbeing, and we're excited about this because it's an ongoing initiative, but also a new one in our system. And we are really focusing as a school board on student well-being, and the formation of this new department is a way for us to really go further with that work. If you haven't already, if you want to be able to see the slides a little bit better, if you can change the layout of your screen. So if you click on the 3 dots at the bottom right of your screen, and then go up to change layout. If you go to spotlight or sidebar, that'll make the slides that much larger for you. Maybe a little bit easier to see. So I will only say a few more things about our department. Prior to the formation of the Student Wellbeing Department, we only had one department called Student Services, which included special education services as well as our staff that support students' mental health and well-being. So this new department that we have brings with it all of our social work staff and our child and youth counselors, as well as our 2 Michelles tonight, our mental health lead and instructional program leader. So all of those staff come over with us to student well-being. They're also managers of those school-based child and youth counselors and social workers as well. And remaining in the former Student Services Department is now the Special Education Services Department, which focuses specifically on students with special needs. So our department's only been in place for a couple of weeks, so we're excited about the work ahead and excited to share with you tonight. So I'm going to hand over much of the speaking to Michelle and Michelle, but I'm going to let them introduce themselves first before we get into the slide deck. So I'll start with Michelle Bates.
Great, thanks everyone. Thank you for inviting us. We're excited to be here tonight. And in particular, I see some familiar names and some familiar faces. And so I'm excited that we can draw together again. So as mentioned, I'm the mental health lead for the board. You'll see on the slide, we always think it's important to share a little bit about ourselves, right? We ask this of our students all the time, and we ask this of our staff. And so it only makes sense because in relationships, we begin to, as we share about ourselves, our relationships can develop. So you'll see beside my name, I've got a picture of a motorcycle. I love to motorcycle ride. My husband and I just bought a big cruiser last fall in October. And you'll also see a picture of one of our dogs. So I love to, I have 2 dogs, father and son, and I love to do agility with them. You may see behind me some pictures of my family on the wall. So I welcome you into my home, and thank you for having us here. Michelle, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Michelle McCann, and I've been an elementary teacher in Halton for about 15 years now, a job that I love very much. Spent many years in primary junior classrooms, as well as a special education resource teacher and an ESL teacher. My first 9 years were spent at Mackenzie Smith Bennett, so shout out there. It was a very happy place for me to be, so nice to see you. And I'm a mom of 2 young children, as well as 2 cats. So that explains the cat picture there as well. I'm currently in the position of instructional program leader in the area of student well-being. So a brand new position this year, joining the well-being department with Mark and Michelle. So really happy to be here. Nice to see everyone.
Great, thanks, Michelle. So we'll just go back here and just to share on this slide, here are the things that that we've come prepared to help talk about. So just a few things as we get going. You'll notice this image of the turtle. That's because sometimes turtles move really fast and sometimes they move really slowly. So you may find that tonight as we go. Michelle and I will certainly do our best, though, to pace ourselves. As we begin, Michelle and I certainly want to acknowledge that as we're talking about mental health, sometimes that's a sensitive and painful discussion topic for ourselves. And so we just, we want to encourage you to take care of yourselves. If you find that this becomes a little bit upsetting, please let us know, and we'll figure out a way that we can be supportive. So, Michelle, this one's yours.
Yes. So just before we get started and into the slideshow as a whole, we just wanted to take a moment to have everyone do a little check-in just with yourself. So just reflecting with yourself. We're not going to share it widely as a group this evening, but if you look at this scale here, we have various images of Scooby-Doo as a reference. So you can see by his facial expressions that he feels many different ways. So we just want to take a moment to acknowledge within yourself, how are you feeling on a scale of Scooby at the end of this day? You may have felt like all of these Scoobies today. I think I have. But this check-in is also an example of something that a teacher may use in their classroom to check in with students, just to get a gauge of how they're feeling and to share and to start some conversations. So before we start today, just do a little check-in with yourself. Which Scooby are you?
Thanks, Michelle. So we invite you again, just in a quiet reflection, to be thinking about when you hear these words about mental health, what are the words, the ideas, or images that come to mind? And so I invite you just to take a moment to reflect on that, because that helps lead us in to this next part, which is really to invite us to think about what do we actually mean by mental health. And so you'll see by these emojis that most of us, when we think about mental health, we tend to think about feelings. And just like Scooby, we have lots of different emotions and feelings. And mental health is about feelings, but mental health is also about our behaviors, our thoughts. Mental health is also about our purpose and our meaning, our sense of identity, our sense of connectedness and belonging in our lives. We particularly like this definition, this framework that comes to us from First Nations. And you'll see that it's inviting us to think about mental health as a sense of balance between all these elements that make us as individuals. You'll see also the reflection about purpose, hope, belonging, a sense of where our place is in the world, in our lives, and that connection to our creation and a rich history. We know that in the news, it's very hard to watch any news without being bombarded with lots of alarm bells, and the spotlight being on child and youth and adult mental health. And so we want to acknowledge that as parents and community members, as staff, we're all really thinking about this. We're all wondering what is going on with the impact of the pandemic. What is happening for our children and youth? And we've got some recent survey data from parents of this board that can help shed a little bit of light on their perceptions of what's happening for their children. So you may have seen this survey that came out recently. We are asking parents for their input. We'd like to plan some parent information sessions. Nuri has been involved with that planning. Thank you, Nuri. And so on this particular slide, we are sharing the results of 3,500 parents, just over 3,500 parents who are saying that you can see almost 1,800 of their children, they think their mental health is about the same. However, just over 1,700 parents are saying that their child's mental health and well-being has changed for the worse. So it's not quite the 70% that you often hear quoted in statistics and news reports, but still an alarming number for sure. So this invites us to think now about what about your well-being and your child's. And in particular, we want to share with you ways that you are and ways that you might be able to support both your own and your child's well-being. We always think it's important to invite an understanding about what's referred to as the continuum of mental health. When I asked, what are those words and images that come to mind when you hear the word mental health, it's quite common for people to think about mental illness. And that's understandable. Mental illness is part of a mental health and well-being continuum. So you can see that somewhere on this continuum, you might have the presence of a mental illness all the way to a little bit of a presence of a mental illness. What I particularly like about this continuum is that it has an intersection with well-being. So it allows us to do an assessment, to be thinking about where are we on this continuum of well-being. So we might, for example, have minimal well-being, or we might have optimal well-being. Ideally, everyone wants to be in optimal well-being, whether that's for yourself, your friends, your loved ones, your children. Another important contribution, I think, of this continuum is it's a reminder that even if one has a mental illness, and 1 in 4 adults is said to have a mental illness, 1 in 5 children is said to have a diagnosable mental illness, that despite the presence of a mental illness, we can be well. And I think that's a really hopeful and important message. It's also invites us to think about, even without a mental illness, our well-being could range from being good to not so good. We want to acknowledge that right now in current times, there is a lot going on that is really challenging our well-being. And in particular, it represents lots of changes and uncertainty. And so on this slide, we are listing just some of the many areas in which COVID-19 and racial injustice continues to impact our children and youth today. And I imagine that as you look at this list, as we were putting this together, we recognized, wow, there is a lot happening in so many different areas and domains of not only our children's lives, our families' lives, and also our communities' lives. And that's what makes this particularly tricky, because it's a bit of a cascade. It all clumps together. It loads up on one another. So what does the current uncertainty and changes, the stresses and challenges mean for our mental health? Well, for those of us who have pre-existing conditions, Any additional and new stressors, like what's going on, might make us more vulnerable. However, there's some very interesting information out there, which is suggesting that those who have been involved with treatment and supports, that they're actually doing okay because they have supports and they have skills in order to help navigate these difficult times. We're going to talk a little bit more in a few minutes about this notion of stress and really trying to distinguish toxic, tolerable, chronic, normative stress. But the important thing to know is that when you have really deep stress without relief or respite, it actually harms your mental health. So one of the takeaways I'm hoping that all of you hear from us tonight is a celebration of when you do take relief and respite from your stressors and your children's. You help your children have some respite from their stressors, because that's really important. And we'll also give you some ideas and strategies on how to do that. I think the next line is also a hopeful message. We know that most people are going to get through this. They are getting through this, and they will manage. It doesn't mean that these are easy times. It means that we're managing and we will get through them. And it's also an important reminder that there are things that people are doing. There are things that are available in terms of strategies and supports that can help us. So when you're thinking about your children, here are some examples of emotional and or behavioral or physical reactions that you might see. Parents always know their children the best. And so as the expert in your children, you may notice some things that are different for them. And I think part of the value of this kind of sharing is it just allows you to say, yeah, I noticed that, I'm thinking about this. No, my child seems okay in regard to this particular feature. One of the things we know is that it's very difficult and nigh impossible to talk about children's mental health and well-being without talking about adult well-being. That means your well-being as parents and caregivers. It also means talking about the well-being of our staff. So we're going through this pandemic as well. So here are some things that when you look in the mirror, that you might see reflected in yourself or your friends or other family members. One of the things we're hearing from parents is just how overwhelming and challenging it is when their children are learning at home. That's just such an added element of stress for them. And so as one person said, am I both their teacher and their tech wizard now too? We also wanted to acknowledge that for many parents, they're often feeling very guilty. And their guilt seems to center around this concern that they're not doing enough for their children or that they're not doing it well enough. And so if you find yourself questioning or having these guilt feelings, know that you're not alone in that. And we're going to offer up some ideas on maybe how to manage and navigate those feelings and thoughts. We also know and hear that lots of parents are, as a result, doing a lot of labeling and blaming and shaming themselves about how we're doing as parents. And now we're hearing lots about how parents and caregivers and even our staff, our teachers are worried about what does this mean for the future? What does this mean for our students' learning, the long-term impact, and even some important conversations around gaps. So you've got a lot on your minds. Earlier, I had mentioned when we were talking about the continuum of mental health, that it is a continuum. It flows from doing really well to the presence of a mental illness or not doing so well. And many of us think when things are not going well, commonly we'll say, oh, I need to go see someone. I need to go see a therapist, or someone will recommend that. What we really like about this particular slide is it really invites us to recognize that there's a space somewhere in the middle. And so tonight, we're going to be sharing with you strategies and resources that help you with that in-between space. So for example, we know that when we're doing well and when we're stressed, and let's face it, most children right now are stressed. So we recognize the importance of self-care and social support. That's really important. We also recognize along that continuum that we might find ourselves struggling, or our children might be struggling. And so that's when we need some additional supports. And so you'll see that reflected in community supports, both at school and in the larger and broader community. Sadly, there are times when we ourselves and or our children are in crisis and we need emergency services. And we'll be providing you with information and resources about that as well. We know that children have always needed these things. And so we share this because we hope that it is a reassurance for all of you. That how you have parented, how you have provided for the mental health and well-being, the emotional needs of your children, you can continue to do that despite these challenging times. Here are some ideas that we're sharing around ways that you can support your child. And we're quite confident that when you look at this list and some other strategies, that you will see yourself reflected in this. You'll be like, oh, I do this, and I do this, and I help with this. And we think that's really important, that you give yourself lots of validation and confirmation for the great work and the efforts that you are doing. One of the things that we kind of want to stress here is the importance of being a positive role model. Children take their cues from us as adults. So just as we say to staff, let your children know, let your students know that you want to and need to take care of yourself. That's being a good role model. It also gives permission for students to do that too. They hear the message that self-care, taking care of our well-being, needs to be prioritized and is important. We also know that that not only teachers, but also as parents and caregivers, you play a vital role, you do a great job around teaching your children about resiliency and coping skills. And we'll have some resources to help you with that. You'll see on the bottom line on our HDSB website, and perhaps Mark, you could put that in the chat box, maybe the hot link to that. You'll see that we have put together resources for parents, and we've also put together resources for students. And we certainly encourage you to have a look at that when you can. All the resources that we are sharing here with you tonight appear on the website. I'd mentioned earlier about stress. Lots of us are thinking about stress. And it's really important to have a perspective about that stress can be positive and normal. All of us have had that experience of things that we've been excited about in our life. They represent change, but they kind of come alongside some stress. Maybe when you were having your children, you were excited, but also experienced that as stressful. That's a normative response. We also know that stress can be tolerable or it can be toxic. And so we wanted to share with you this important distinction. So the notion of tolerable stress is that it is a serious temporary stress. However, the circumstances are buffered by supportive relationships. And that's where all of you, as caregivers and parents, that's where all of us in the school system play a really vital role. Our relationships with our children, with our youth, with our students, is helping to buffer this temporary stress that our students are experiencing now because we're in a pandemic, but also stress is part of life and has been here before the pandemic and will be here after the pandemic. What we want to avoid, however, is that toxic stress, and that's defined as frequent, chronic, and uncontrolled. And we know that that's very harmful to adults. It's very harmful to children and youth. So we really want to be on the lookout for when that stress gets so frequent, chronic, and uncontrolled, because that really starts to harm our mental health. Lots of discussion about resiliency. So this slide invites us to think about when we're thinking about our children, when we're thinking about ourselves. What's the balance between the stressors I'm facing and those things that help me to be resilient? Those things like supports, skills, and relationships. The more stressors we're under, the more supports and skills and relationships we need. On this slide, we share some additional ways that you can support your child. And we certainly hope that as you read these, as you look at these, that you feel encouraged because you are doing these. We also hope that maybe if you're feeling, hey, how do I bump it up a notch, that there might be something here that could encourage you to try an additional way to support your child. One of the things that I want to kind of zero in on is this notion of letting go of what if. What ifs promote a lot of anxious and stress feelings. It's a future focus. It's about focusing on what isn't known yet. We can get ourselves quite stressed and upset about it. And so it becomes an important strategy for us and for our children, not to focus on what if, but to focus right now on what is. What do I know right now? What am I feeling right now? What is predictable? A really important strategy. We also know, we hear lovely examples in our classrooms where children are invited and encouraged to practice gratitude, to share the things that they're grateful for. And they're incredibly moving to hear what your children are sharing. And correlated and related to that is the strategy of looking for inspiring stories and inspiring examples. And again, your children are amazing what they notice. It's really exciting. And these don't have to be big things to be inspiring. They can be things of neighbors helping neighbors, of food banks helping those with food insecurity. Really important things, really great things. So when we think about when our students are and our children are stressed, how can I help support them with their mental health and well-being so we can provide them with some skills? And these 4 resources are available on our website. They are things that you can be using within your home, and they are things that lots of our teachers are using within the classroom in terms of teaching their students these important skills. Here then are some supports, social supports, when our students are stressed, and again, some additional strategies. All of these resources are available on HDSB. I just, however, would like to highlight one in particular, and that is Danielle's Place. You may have heard in the news, in reports, that we are seeing an increase in youth who are beginning to have some cause for concern related to body image and to eating disorders. And we just want to share that with you. So as a parent or guardian, if you have a concern about that, Danielle's Place is good, a good connection for resources and information to help you gather more information and maybe to seek out some help if you feel that's needed or necessary. We also wanted to share and encourage you to think about ways that you can support yourself. Our children are watching us. We're important role models. And our hope is that as you look at these examples, that you will see that you are doing many of these things. A couple of these that I would like to highlight with you. You'll see the image of the Northern Star. When this pandemic happened, I, probably like many of you, started wondering, how can I help guide my family? How can I help my children? I don't have anyone around me in my life, in my family, who lived through the last pandemic. So I found myself thinking, golly, I guess I've got to invent this. I guess I have to figure this out. And so in conversation with one of my sons, I was saying, what would be really helpful to you right now? And he said, Mom, you always guide us. You always remind us that life can be tough, but we can find our way through it. And so he was reminding me of things that have been a guiding image or grounding words that have been meaningful to us as a family. And here he was as a young adult, sharing these important grounding images and words. So I invite all of you to think, what are your guiding images or words? 30, 40 years from now, what do you want your children to remember about your example of how you led them through this pandemic and through these difficult times? I also want to highlight that if now, in our current circumstance, now is the time for things to be different. It is a pandemic. And so I encourage you to change your expectations for you and for your children. Be gentle with yourselves. You've got a lot that you're dealing with, a lot that's going on. Here are some community resources for parents that provide social support. Rock has started a really neat coffee cafe. It's not therapy, it's not counseling, it's an opportunity for parents to come together and share ideas and share experiences. And that's a really neat resource and support. And you'll see there are lots of other resources that are available in the community from a supportive perspective. You'll see here, and Nuri is familiar with this, we're doing some planning to be providing some upcoming parent information sessions. And so we're excited about what we're in the midst of planning, and we hope to be providing you with an update about that in the next few weeks or so. Understandably, when we're concerned about our child's well-being, we often wonder, well, like, how do I know if they're struggling? Okay, so they're stressed, but how do I know if I should worry? How do I know if they're really struggling? And so we think these three questions are really helpful. So are their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors intense, long-lasting, or having a big impact? And if you answer yes to one, two, or all of these, it's an opportunity to be thinking about some next steps in terms of getting some additional support and help for your child. So if your child is struggling, we certainly encourage you. You are welcome to contact the school to share your concerns. That could be their classroom teacher, could be the principal, could be a CERT or a guidance counselor, any trusted adult that you have within that school setting. Feel free to share your concerns, and the school will share information back. You might find that your child's really super stressed or struggling at home, but in fact is managing okay at school. That's helpful information for you as a parent to know. We also, when you share with us, we'll be able to support and let you know how we're helping your child in class, and there could also be additional supports at school that we are able to provide in order to help support your child. We could also provide you with information about resources in the community. The next two lines are resources that you may find helpful in terms of recognizing and or talking with your child. And again, these resources are available on the MyHDSB website. I recognize that this slide has a lot on it. And again, all of these are available on hdsb.ca. So we want you to know that there are a lot of resources out in the community. And these resources, these services are here and available and wanting to help. On this particular slide, I'd like to highlight two. We are hearing from lots of youth and from adults that there are some challenges. More people are struggling with drug, alcohol, or gambling concerns. We want you to know that help is available. So if you're a parent of a child and you're concerned about their gaming or gambling or their drug or alcohol use, ADAPT is a very good resource for you. If as an adult you have some concerns, ADAPT can also be a resource for you. SI Outreach, This provides information and coping strategies for the concerns when children and youth are self-harming and self-injury. And again, we are hearing that with the increase in stress of children and youth, that we're seeing an increase in self-harm and self-injury. So as a parent, this is a great resource to go to because it provides really good information around information, but also do's and don'ts, how to help your child. If you're looking for some counseling, ROC, which is our lead agency here in Halton, they have this one-stop live answer, and so you can call this number, share your what your needs are, and they will help guide you to a lot of services. This is kind of exciting because it's a one-stop shop. If your child is in crisis, again, we want you to know that you can reach out to a trusted adult at school. You can see that we also have the ROC crisis line, and the number is provided there. Some of you may be familiar with 911 and the mental health outreach team, emergency room, and family doctor. Suicide is a concern, and so this particular guide is an opportunity for parents to learn more about suicide, what some of the warning signs are, concerning signs, how to reach out for help, what they can do. So we hope that that's helpful information to you. Now I'll turn it over to Michelle to share the great things that are happening in schools to support children.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, so I mean, as we know, our children spend a lot of time at school, right? And they spend a lot of time with their teacher, in classrooms, with different adults that they interact with in their lives. And teachers are, they're not mental health specialists, but they do have a very important role in supporting the well-being of the students. And as Michelle mentioned earlier, really this work lays in the way that these teachers are building relationships with their students. That's really the foundation of well-being within the classroom. Teachers build these relationships by getting to know each individual child, knowing their strengths, their interests, their experiences, in order to really foster those positive relationships. And then they further foster those relationships by providing an inclusive environment where students feel safe and can build those relationships with each other in the classroom as well. Academic instruction and well-being instruction really go hand in hand. So by working to meet the individual needs of each student, teachers help them to develop academically and at the same time, both socially and emotionally. And when you see that last kind of statement there, providing a circle of care. So parents know their children very well. Teachers also get to know students very well. And they may often be alerted to a sign that something's not quite right, a change in a student that they notice. And that's when if they're worried about the student's mental health and or well-being, they would reach out to this circle of support. So they would reach out to the caregiver or parent, reach out to the special education resource teacher, administrator, to just provide that, that team approach and that circle of care to supporting the student. And then the ways that teachers promote mental health and well-being in their classrooms is really an integral part of their instruction. So whether it's helping students build their own mental health literacy by providing a lesson based on reducing stigma. So I know it's a bit tiny, but I wanted to highlight what a few teachers are doing in Halton that are really great. So the tweet on the left-hand side is an example of a teacher using an activity to shatter stigma and talk about the ways that we describe mental illness and what that looks like. Or it could be using a book as a mentor text, which is the tweet on the right there in Mrs. Tate's class, and using that story to really open up conversations about emotions and feelings and helping students to develop coping strategies when they're feeling stressed or overwhelmed. And as Michelle mentioned earlier, really that importance of practicing gratitude. So the middle tweets are examples of teachers practicing gratitude with their students and just sharing the good together. And these are all just some examples of what it may look like in the classroom when teachers are supporting the mental health and well-being of their students.
Thanks, Michelle. This now leads us to, as adults, if we're struggling, what help is available to us? So the Canadian Mental Health Association is a great resource for adults. I mentioned haltonadapt.org. Some people have access to EAP, not everybody, of course. There can be private therapists or practitioners, and also the importance of elders and religious or spiritual leaders. They can be great sources of support for us when we're in need, when we ourselves are struggling. As adults, if you or someone you know is in crisis, the Halton Distress Center, it's their toll-free number, is available all the time. If someone's in a suicidal crisis or extremely distressed, 911, an emergency room, or a family doctor are resources available. So as we conclude, here are just some reminders. We want you to go gently with yourself. And part of that is to recognize you're doing your best and you are already doing lots of things that are helpful to yourself and your children. We want to share a reminder of a hopeful message that even in stressful and tough times like we're in, we can be mentally healthy. And it is very important that we take care of ourselves and our well-being. And finally, reaching out for support wherever we are along this continuum, wherever our children are along this continuum, is important so that we can get support and that we can connect with others, because all of that is very helpful.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, Zena, I saw there's a couple questions on the side. I don't
Yeah.
know if you guys were following those.
Yeah, it is in the chat box. So there is some comments and there is some question. So for the comments from Jose, parents of children with special needs have not had respite since last March and are an incredible amount of stress and exhaustion. And I feel most parents are in some boat, especially single mothers and parents with special needs children. And Jose, again, also student with special needs, disabilities, are having a very difficult time and they are extremely stressed out and many behaviors are emerging. From Ali, I would add single parents along with the single mothers. That's right. And thank you, Mark, for the website that you just shared. Jose, there is a question. Are these their resources for students with special needs over 18?
So one of the things that, one of the information sessions that we are in the process of planning is specifically for parents of children with special needs. And that would include over 18. And we're looking to partner up with one of our community agencies. We recognize that the burden and stress is not equal. And many of you in the chat box are acknowledging. So it's the notion of we're all in the same storm, but we're in different boats. I would suggest that the storm is different for different people. This pandemic is disproportionately impacting people in many different ways. And so I value and appreciate that all of you are highlighting. This is much more difficult for some than others. And I recognize that.
So we have another question from Osma. Does the student well-being department work with the teachers or with the student individually?
Sure, I'll take that one.
Yes.
So it's not an or, it's an and. So our staff do both of those things. We have staff that work directly with students, and that would be our social workers and our child and youth counselors. But then we also have those same staff working with other staff in the schools to support them in the work that they do with students. And then we have staff such as Michelle that you're meeting tonight, who also work to support our school staff to do that work much better as well.
Okay, thank you. I think, Nina, your question is almost there. Thank you so much to take the action before I ask the question. I have a question from my side, if you don't mind. Are you do you usually do some presentation for the schools if they ask for some presentation about mental and well-being?
If you're asking Michelle and I, yes. So in fact, the impetus for the board-wide parent information sessions has come about because we've had a lot of schools reaching out to us and saying, can you come and help us? And so we thought, okay, parents are needing this. And the survey confirmed and validated that. As John mentioned, just 2 nights ago, I was with some Burlington schools. I know there's a parent here tonight who is on that call as well. So yes, we do that. Our hope is that the board-wide sessions that we're planning will reach all parents.
Okay, thank you. So please, if there's any other question, either through the chat or if you want to talk directly, just raise your hand. Anyone? Yes, Ali. Go ahead.
Thanks. I want to thank both Michelle and Michelle for that presentation. Thank you. The question is for either Michelle's or Mark. You answered the question about school presentations. Mark, at the beginning, and I sort of slid in late. I blame my children for that. Did you say this is a new section that was created, the student well-being? And then my follow-on would be, is this a reaction to the pandemic? Or is this a section that will stay beyond the pandemic to help with the reintegration of folks back into to live classes? Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Sally. The thinking and planning for this new department was occurring before the pandemic. And actually, we would have started it last September. We were planning on some changes to our structures and last school year. But with the pandemic coming, we decided that the system needed stability, so we held the status quo. But then as the year has progressed, we decided that there was the need to move ahead with some of those changes, one of which was the formation of this new department. And in terms of going forward, most definitely the intention is that this will be a new structure going ahead for all the reasons we had planned before the pandemic, but even more importantly, now that we're in the pandemic and recognize the needs for some significant supports for our students with respect to their well-being and their mental health. So it will continue.
Great, thanks, Mark.
I think Ruby, please go ahead. You raise your hand.
Thank you, Zena. First of all, thank you, Michelle and Mark, for the wonderful information. That's a lot of stuff to take in, but it's something to be knowledgeable and to provide if in case someone needs it. Now, my question is in regards to a situation that happened with actually a teacher of my child, It happened in a breakout room, so children were all in a separate rooms and they were working on group projects. And obviously the teacher could hear everything that all of these children were discussing, and some of the boys were saying unkind things. So she actually had a very emotional breakdown. And how I know is I was in the room, in the office, and my daughter was having her class there. So I was shocked to see what was happening. But she actually had a breakdown in front of the whole class, and she was crying and she was like loud. So my question is, how are teachers being supported throughout the pandemic, and do they have a resource that they can go to that will help them kind of like deal with the stresses that parents are going through, children and students are going through? What kind of information, like what are they being provided with?
Thanks. That's a great question. Thanks for that. We certainly recognize that our teachers are under a great deal of challenge and stress in the pandemic as well. I know we get this, we understand this more as adults, because often our students just think that teachers are teachers, right? And not necessarily recognize that they have, lives and families outside of their role as teachers as well. So we certainly know that all of our staff have a wide range of realities in their own lives and how the pandemic is affecting them. And so there are a number of supports. This presentation that Michelle and Michelle have done tonight, we could easily do the same one around all the realities of the stresses that are impacting our staff and all the supports that we have available for them. So through our human resources department, they have a whole focus on staff wellness with many resources online, on our board web. We have an internal board website for our staff that has many resources there as well. We have counseling services. We have a number of other outreach things, many wellness messages being sent out on a regular basis. So all those kinds of things are there as well. Plus, we support our principals and managers with how they can support their staff, those relationships that they build, the direct conversations that they have with them. And through all those relationships and information and services, we try really hard to support our staff as well. We know, it's not always enough. And, you may see some of that come out in terms of their, how they're interacting and handling the situations with their students. But we certainly are working very hard to support staff also.
Thank you for that, Mark.
Thank you. That was a very good question. I'm sorry, Zena, I'm just going to say this will be our last question for the evening, and then we'll move on with the agenda.
Okay. Yes, Sarah. I don't know if Sarah, she has a question or not.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I was on mute. Thank you.
Okay.
Michelle, it's good to see you again. I was a parent you were speaking about. We saw this just day before yesterday, and going through it twice was something interesting, because this is more food for thought as you get ready to share this with the rest of the parents. But there's a lot that I was like, oh, I forgot that she had mentioned that, or I forgot that she had mentioned this point. And so when you share this with the rest of the parents, if there could be takeaways that maybe we could put on the fridge, or even if it's as something as small as the North Star that can be put on our desk, because every single one of us acts as that. But it's such a good reminder. It's so important for us to keep that in mind. But also, like that Scooby-Doo slide that you had, I could totally see myself holding it up at the end of the week to my daughter and being like, where are you this week? Or where are you at the end of the day? Because it is very different. So just a few takeaways that we could print out on our own as parents would be extremely helpful. Thank you.
If you don't mind, if I could wrap up with a final comment, and that's that over the past year, our senior team and our trustees, with input from a number of stakeholders, developed a new multi-year plan for our board. And student well-being is certainly one of the key areas of focus in that plan. And so you'll see more information, more resources, more strategies and supports coming through that focus and effort. I'd like to thank the trustees for their support in that. Their recognition of how important this work is for our students. And if there's a time in the future that you'd like us to come back and share more of what we're doing, we'd be happy to do that, and to hear your input for sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation tonight. It was just amazing. And the subject was so interested. Thank you so much. And in the chat box also, Sherry, she shared some of the resources. You can go through it. And again, I'm so thankful for your presentation. And it is for you, Andrea. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. And just a reminder, and I don't think I mentioned it earlier, to anybody watching, in the agenda that was sent out, there is a link to a doc for questions that could be answered later on after the live stream goes through. And we'd love to have you back at some time. I know this is just the beginning for you. So, and so thank you for joining us. Feel free to leave now if you like, or stay. It's up to you. And we're going to just move on to the superintendent. Oh, to the superintendent report. John? John, you're on mute.
Thanks. I think that's one of the most common expressions I've heard in the last 12 months. You're on mute. Anyways, thanks to Mark and Michelle. That was a great time just to think and reflect. And that's what a wonderful opportunity you gave us tonight. So thanks for that. There were a couple of questions that it didn't pertain to that, so I'll start with them that were up on the board, and I can't necessarily answer them. One was somebody happened on it and asked what is the nature of this meeting. So the person left their email, and I will email them and tell them all about PIC and tell them about the next meeting and welcome them to come to that. So that was one question. Another was about asymptomatic testing, and they wanted to know if any schools were participating, who will be performing the tests in the schools, if known. And actually, we had a meeting about that today, and our lead person on that is Terry Blackwell, and she will be coming out with information for parents very soon. They're just, she is working closely with public health, and those, yes, asymptomatic testing is in the plans, and there's going to be a whole communication plan so that folks know about it. It will very important to know that it's always with the permission of parents, and it will likely be outside of the school day, so a community type event after the school day, and they will be doing different groups of schools on a weekly basis and communicating with the communities before that. Before it happens, so that they can choose to participate if that is meets their family health needs. So more to come on that, and Terry Blackwell will be letting us know. And when I get more information, when I get the exact information on that, I'll put that up on the PIC website, just or a link, so that people can see that we answered the question. And we answered the question that was asked during the meeting. This is a new format for us, so it's kind of, you never know what's going to come, but great questions too. Just an update on PRO grants. 72 schools have put forward proposals. That's as many as we had pre-COVID, so we're really excited about that. We're really appreciative of these school councils organizing events and reaching out and connecting to the parents in our community. The topics range from unstructured outdoor play to anti-racism, and we've had a lot of projects focused on mental health and well-being. So I think it's a need out there, and people are addressing it in a lot of different ways. Many schools are combining their efforts, and lots are working on issues specific to their schools or connected to their school growth plans. So a really nice cross-section on the PRO grants. Regarding our bylaw, we had one suggested amendment to our bylaws, and it makes sense based on current legislation and also what we're doing right now tonight. Section 8.3 now reads, members may participate in any meeting by electronic means. And this makes our bylaw flexible for situations like COVID, and for next year, if we are having in-person meetings, folks can call in if they can't make the meeting. So, and it is compliant with the spirit of Reg 330, although it was written 10 years ago, which allows for people to call in by phone. Google Meet is the today version of that, and the bylaws will be posted on the website. And the last thing, parent, guardian, staff, students, and of course members of PIC are encouraged to provide input on the budget priorities for the upcoming school year through online questionnaire found on our board's website. The questionnaire focuses on aligning priorities to our strategic needs and our multi-year plan. Input must be received by March 5th, 2021, and the results of the consultation will be presented at the April 7th, 2021 board meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Any questions about that? Okay, we'll move on to the trustees update. I'm not sure who's doing it tonight.
I'm
Tanya, go ahead.
Thank you, everyone. So thank you, John. You actually mentioned some of the items that the trustees were going to provide updates on. So I'll chat for a shorter period of time. So just to give you an update, I feel like we were just here a few weeks ago, so there's not too much new to report, but wanted to let you know that at our twice monthly board meetings, trustees continue to receive updates on how the school year is being impacted by COVID. So we do receive updates that can range anything from how many kids are in virtual versus in bricks and mortar, what are the new protocols being put in place, what are the health protocols at each school, safety measures, curriculum, all sorts of things. So we do get updates. So if anyone ever wants to receive those updates live, you can always tune into our board meetings. So in response to some recent acts of hate that have occurred in our school communities, our board chair shared an anti-racism statement with the public last night. And it's a very lengthy statement. It's a statement that's supported by all the trustees and senior staff. And you will be receiving a copy of this statement most likely tomorrow. It's going to be shared with all the all HDSB students and families. John and Mark mentioned the multi-year plan, and there's 5 areas of commitment. One of them was mental health and well-being, which we had a very good presentation on tonight. And there are a few other ones. And I'm mentioning this because one of them has to do with Indigenous perspectives, and another one's about equity. So what I wanted to share with you tonight is that as trustees of the board, we take our commitments very seriously, and we're also growing and learning. And some examples of what trustees are doing to further develop their knowledge and to show their commitment is that this upcoming Thursday, trustees are going to be taking a virtual tour of a residential school. And throughout the month of April, we're continuing with anti-Black racism training. And there's also a lot of other PD that we do as far as human rights are concerned. So we're constantly learning, and we're applying what we're learning to the decisions we make, and we make sure that whenever we make a decision, the number one priority is our students and their achievement. As you are aware, or perhaps not, our director, Stuart Miller, will be retiring in August. Consequently, trustees have been working through the very lengthy process of hiring the next director. It's actually a process that's been going on for a few months, and it'll continue until you hear an announcement from us. And then I'll skip the next couple of points because John already talked to them. And oh, I guess one last thing that came to mind when Michelle, and Mark were discussing mental health and well-being is that I think there were so many great supports presented tonight. And I was thinking that perhaps what we here can do individually is that if you know of someone whose spirits can be lifted for all the work they've been doing for the HDSB, for students, if there's someone you want to recognize, someone's spirits you want to lift, I encourage you to nominate them for an Inspire Award. I think that'll go a long way to help help their mental health. So you can find nominations on our website, and I encourage you to submit a nomination on a regular basis. We're always excited to, trustees are always excited to see some nominations. I think that's it. Trustee Gray and Trustee Amos, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you very much, Trustee Rocha. I think you really covered it quite well. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, I got thumbs up. So we are done. Back to you, Andrea.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Any questions? Okay. And so our next meeting is April 8th, again, virtually at 7 p.m. And that one, I believe, is another one of these meets, right, John? Yes. Okay. And then that's it. Being adjourned at 8:15.
Andrea, I think Sarah, she has a question or something.
Oh, sorry. I didn't see that one. Go ahead, Sarah.
I do. I was a little bit late because I couldn't find the button.
Okay.
It's just a thought that came into mind when you were asking about the nominations for the Inspire Awards. And I'm just putting it out there, literally just came to mind right now. Is there some way that we could potentially give like a group nomination or some form of recognition to all the teachers in HDSB, like whether it's in some sort of announcement, a place on the website, I don't know, but they've all went above and beyond when it came to teaching our children during COVID. Like every time this comes up, I'm like, oh, I just want to nominate my daughter's teacher, but I'm like, but every single teacher has done what she's done, but she's done so much, and it's literally every single day. So just food for thought. If there's a way to that, I would love for that to happen.
Sure. Hi, Sarah. So yes, our staff is doing an amazing job this year. And I think Director Miller has been very cognizant of everyone's dedication, and he does send out emails to staff recognizing their efforts and thanking them for everything they're doing under these circumstances. But you know what? Feel free to nominate your daughter. I think you said your daughter. Yes. Your daughter's teacher, and all her teachers. So feel free to do it. But I will. We can talk to Director Miller again. But they do get notices of thanks on a regular basis, and not just from Director Miller, but from trustees and from principals and superintendents. And a lot of parents do send out emails copying us and letting them know how much our staff is appreciated. But thank you for bringing that up today.
No, of course. Thank you, Trustee Tanya. And I saw your message, John, and it just couldn't be more true. It's just a matter of fact right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks for saying it. That's awesome. Very positive evening.
Yes. Jose?
Yeah, I just kind of want to piggyback on that. And I think it's really important. Yes, like all teachers doing an amazing job, but the teachers and the EAs who went back on the 4th of January, they truly deserve a special shout out, because I can, as speaking of a mother with a son who was going to school January 4th, I so needed that respite, and I so needed my son to be in school, and he needed to be in school. They don't understand what's going on. And these teachers and EAs that went back are just absolute true superheroes. And I certainly hope that they will be recognized or at least given a shout out. All teachers do, but really they did a fantastic job.
Thank you. Okay. So with that, and that's a great way to end this too, because they have been doing a great job. So at 8:19, we're going to adjourn the meeting, and we'll see you all again on April 8th at 7 p.m. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night. Enjoy the week.